hopefully Tyler can, be having some technical difficulties, but that's all right. Okay. All right, so we'll get started. For those who I have not met, my name is Ben Landis, and I'll be facilitating today's discussion. I founded the Spike Dogs Roundnet Club at the University of Georgia in 2015, and we became a club sport in 2017, podium finishers in 2018, and national champions in 2019. And since graduating 6 years ago, I've remained involved with my club as head coach. I want to thank everyone for calling in, and I want to say we're in it for a good treat today because it's sure to be a great discussion with an amazing panel here. So without further ado, I want to introduce all of today's panelists. So starting out, we've got Isaiah Gibson. He's the acting president of OSU's Buckeye Roundnet Club, whose pickup sessions run 50 to 100 people large. The Buckeyes have competed since 2018 and placed third at 2023 College Nationals. Isaiah's favorite topic is growing clubs by generating interest from students who are new to the sport. Tyler Fernandez is the president of 2022 National Championship Club Baylor Roundnet. Tyler is passionate about teaching leaders of organizations how to cultivate a culture based on developing low to mid players into high-level competitors. Jacob Arzaga is the president of James Madison University Roundnet. JMU has over 70 players in their club and has been operating since 2017. Jacob is passionate about developing the competitive college Roundnet scene. Ben Dantowitz founded the University of Rochester Roundnet Club, and since graduating has continued working on community building projects, perhaps most notably volunteering for USA Roundnet. He is eager to inspire the next generation of community builders and share insights about the importance of continuing Roundnet beyond college. And last but not least, we have Dylan Riemann. He currently serves as the advisor and coach to Stony Brook University Roundnet, which has grown its membership over the years from 4 to 400. Previously, he served as an event coordinator, president, and as a member of the College Rules Board under Nora White. His current focus at SBU is building out a dedicated competitive travel roster and more broadly growing the sport of Roundnet. So big thank you to all of our panelists for dedicating some time today to dish out their advice and their war stories. I'm super excited to hear from all of them. A couple administrative notes before we get started. The meeting is being recorded. Feel free to drop in and out anytime as needed. And we're going to prioritize audience questions. We have a small in-person audience at the moment, but feel free to put in questions as you have them in the chat, or if you want to just ask and come off mute, I would just ask that you use the hand raise function just to kind of keep it organized, and I'll keep an eye out for those. We're also going to have some time at the end. I have some preset questions, but we'll definitely save a good chunk of time at the end for just purely audience Q&A. So keep those questions in mind. Okay, so I'm going to kick us off with sort of a softball question, but I introduced the panelists a little bit, but if each panelist just wants to go ahead and talk a little bit about their club, as well as kind of what their role looks like within their club, and any other opening comments that you want to make. So why don't we start with Dylan?
Everybody can hear me okay? Sweet. Yeah, so my name is Dylan, and I am the current coach and advisor of Stony Brook Roundnet. I was previously the president and helped run the club from a student lens, but now I'm a full-time faculty member at Stony Brook University working in student programs and orientation. So I get first dibs on all the students that are coming to Stony Brook, and I try to make them play Roundnet. We have a lot of fun kind of facilitating the club, and we typically we have a two-pronged approach to the way that we run that, which is through our competitive practices and then our pickups. We're working on building up that social aspect of what it means to be a college club, even though you're focusing on, a niche sport or niche activity. But Stony Brook University, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, I'm sure, provides a lot of unique opportunities to get funding and spaces reserved in different places for students to engage in engage with each other in that kind of way. So that's something that we are very focused on. But building up that competitive roster, as Ben mentioned initially, is something that is a big priority for us this year. I'm actually just getting back from a competitive practice myself. So those are just a couple things for me. Pleasure to be here and share some knowledge with everybody.
Thanks, Dylan. Whoever wants to go next, and go ahead.
I can go next. Sweet. So I'm Tyler Fernandez. I am the club president for Baylor University. And similar to what Dylan said, we have an approach of competitive practices and then like a recreational practice, like I like to call it. So one of those things that I spend a lot of my time doing is running both of those. I get a lot of help from other people bringing equipment and everything else, but generally speaking, twice a week in the center of campus, I've found that we get really good engagement with freshmen and other people coming out as long as we're playing on campus in the middle. And so we kind of hold a 2-hour period twice a week for anyone to jump in and play games, regardless of whether or not they're members. And then twice a week, we have dedicated time towards drilling in more competitive games where the people who actually want to improve on their game and compete on a club team or a club sport have an opportunity to grow, where we get to focus on them more than just everyone else and having a good club environment to play for like social. So.
Go ahead, Ben.
Just didn't want to butt in over anybody. I mean, I'm not in college currently, but I think like what I did in college is very similar to what I do now outside of school, which is promoting very heavily lots of like open pickups. And I think a lot of the people here are competitively minded. Those people tend to find themselves. And so making sure that you're making yourself accessible to the new player, to people who maybe don't know that it's a thing they can join, was a really helpful tool in college. Like Tyler mentioned, finding like the most central place you can on your campus and just getting like in front of people and just showcasing the fun that we all can have playing was a really huge part of growing the club back in college, and is, you know, pretty true in or out of school. So definitely recommend that. And outside of like that, I think then the other big one is providing like a ladder for people to climb. So wherever people come in with their skill level, being approachable and asking them what their goals are and letting them kind of shape what their experience is going to be. If it's to just have a fun time and play recreationally, that's awesome. They know where to find you. And if it's to continue developing, you kind of, you know, provide that path to grow as players and be competitive too.
Hi, my name is Jacob Arzaga. I'm the president at James Madison University. My job is kind of just like communicating with everyone that needs to be communicated with, organizing events, planning out practices, tournaments, whatever we might be doing. I'm kind of the lead on that, trying to be the voice that is talking to everybody, making sure we get what we need when we need it. Yeah, we do practices, open pickups, twice a week. Those are open to anybody. We play those on campus, and then, like similar to what they've all said, we do closed practices where we focus on working on drills and specific techniques to really get better at the sport of Roundnet. Those are twice a week for our more dedicated players who want to go and travel to other schools, go want to play against other schools, win tournaments, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Hello, you hear me? Sweet.
Gotcha.
I'm Isaiah. I run the Buckeye Roundnet Club now. I'm the president. So my job's very similar to probably all of yours. It's just communicating to everyone, you know, when pickups are, what competitive looks like, and how to play. We host pickup twice a week, and then we do our competitive practices before pickup. So we do it like an hour or an hour or two before. We really try to my goal is just get new players into the sport. Ohio State is probably one of the biggest campuses, and we just have so many new freshmen that are eager to get plugged in. So I'm trying to be that club for them, and so far it's going well.
Awesome to hear. Okay, thanks for all the introductions, everyone. That was lovely. So for the first kind of real meaty question, there's some of us on the call, or maybe some people are going to watch this back who are brand new to the college scene. Maybe they don't even have a club at their college yet, but they kind of want to be the person to get that up and running. So I'm going to start with Ben on this question, because he mentioned that he's founded the club at Rochester. If you were to speak to someone brand new to this, what would you say are like some absolute, like, you need to know going into this in terms of starting a new club or getting a club off the ground?
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part. Every college has clubs. If it's not a Roundnet club already, and you have to be the one to start it. So my starting advice is to find the advisors, find the resources specific to your college around starting a club. It looks different in different places, but usually it takes some amount of like initiation paperwork where you have to declare, I want to create a club. Depending on the school, maybe you can start out and say Roundnet is going to be a club sport immediately. For some schools, you have to make a club, and then it's going to be a club sport as it graduates and matures. So just go learn what that process is. It's super thankless, but all the people that will benefit from it will thank you later on when you do that paperwork. So just go do your homework on what that paperwork is. And then on the more fun side of things, building the club outside of the logistical side of things is pretty much all the advice everyone just shared is go play in public spaces and try to build a movement of people that know what Roundnet is and want to be part of a new community, and start to build that critical mass, because among other things, a lot of college clubs will require you have a minimum number of members. So you want to get your paperwork started, and you also want to show that there's a real force, a real presence of people that want this and that will benefit and enjoy having a Roundnet club on your campus. So those are the two big pillars, or the people and the process, or paperwork, really.
Love that answer. Any of the other panelists want to add in anything to that? Go ahead, Dylan. You don't need to raise your hand. You can just pop in.
Gotcha. I'm happy to jump in a little bit here. Just really want to double down on what Ben said. Finding the resources is the biggest thing with starting a club. I'm looking at like Ohio State and Baylor, very different structures than Stony Brook University, for those who are familiar with, just campus size and life and things like that. So making sure you recognize what that process looks like for you is one of the most important things. I actually used to work for student engagement and activities, which oversaw all the clubs and organizations at Stony Brook. So that brought me very close to a lot of the individuals who helped oversee that process and taught me the ins and outs specifically. But connecting with faculty and connecting with even people who aren't like directly advisors, a lot of these people, as a higher education professional myself, I can kind of speak to this in the college world, do want students to reach out to them. That's kind of some of the highlights of their days, is getting to work one-on-one with students to build something really actionable. And like Roundnet is, in the sense that it exists on college spaces, very niche, and you get to build that community for other students. But I also did want to touch on that thankless part that Ben mentioned, which for the most part, it is a very thankless process. It requires a lot of long nights, a lot of days where you're putting in a lot more work than everybody else. But a lot of what I was able to accomplish through my own professional career was built on the back of helping found and grow my Roundnet club, as Ben mentioned earlier, from literally me sitting alone at practices with the spike ball net where no one would show up, to hundreds of people now coming out to different fields and playing and creating a community on campus. That work that you can do for yourself sets you up so professionally. The amount of skills you could learn, they give us budgets and money, and we can play around with that, go to events. We're, going to be traveling for nationals and bringing a community and, all that kind of stuff. So there are a lot of opportunities to also use this as a professional growth opportunity, which we'll touch on later with talking about students and investment and things like that. But, recognizing that it goes so much farther beyond just the creation of a club, but it's really the creation of a community and building skill sets and things like that as well.
Yeah, I think that you made a nuanced point there that I want to highlight. For anyone who's founded a club, they can relate to your story of showing up to the campus quad or the spike ball night and having no one to play with, because you don't have a solid, consistent membership base yet. So I think that's a good thing to call out for those new folks out there looking to start a club. It can be daunting at first, and it's a little bit of a grind at the beginning, but stick with it and it'll work out. Anyone else want to chime in on that question before we move on?
Yeah, I didn't found our club at JMU. That was made well before I was even in high school. But I mean, one thing that has helped me that I feel like would help a lot of people is to make good relationships with whoever is in charge of your club sport program. If that's like whatever your university recreation is, just be professional with them, be a person with them, like make friends with them. If they like you, they will help you try to do whatever you need. So if they ask for you to do something, do it like as soon as you can, do it as well as you can. And then if they like that, they'll respect you, they'll help you with whatever you need. So
All right. If nothing else, we'll move on to talk more specifically about growing your club's membership base. So, of course, this is a huge focus for anyone getting started with their club. But really, no matter what stage your club is at, you're always dealing with turnover in college, with members graduating or going to study abroad or whatever it is. You're always looking to continue recruiting. So I want to start with Isaiah on this one. I know he mentioned how big his campus is, and I'm sure he's in the thick of it right now with all especially the freshmen coming on campus looking for something to do. So Isaiah, could you kick us off, talk about kind of some strategies that you use or found successful for growing your club's membership base?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the biggest things that we do that I've seen like directly translate to just people coming to pick up and gaining competitive players is we'll place bounties on our top players. So we'll advertise this at the Oval, which is like our big, if you don't know Ohio State, it's like just this big grass field in the middle of campus where everyone has to walk through to get to class. And we'll have a big sign that says, come beat us, win $100, or come beat us, win cash prize. We have this giant poster. So the goal is to pull in all of those like college freshmen who think they're sick at the sport from playing in high school and grad parties. They'll grab their friends of like, dude, we got this. And then like our first pickup after our involvement fair, we probably had me and Daniel Patton probably played 50 games of just new guys that are trying to win this bounty. And then we probably saw a turnaround of over half of them that just had a whole bunch of fun. So if you don't do something like that, I'd highly encourage it because it gives new players something to grind for, as well as a chance to see what competitive Roundnet looks like. And I think it's important to say we don't like destroy these new guys. We do our best to keep the game as comfortably close as possible because obviously I don't have $100 to be throwing around to freshmen. But at the same time, we want them to really enjoy the game. So I'm not destroying them with serves. I'm not hitting high level. We're just having fun rallies. We have a crowd when we do it. So I think it's a lot of people's first time being able to like play a sport where they get to touch the ball a lot and they get a crowd. So nights like these are super fun. We try to do it once or twice a month. And then other than that, again, the big thing is just playing in the middle of campus. We just see a lot of people just don't know that our club exists. And if everyone knew that the club existed, we'd probably get 1,000% more people. So just being able to publicize, make your club more publicly accessible to everyone. So again, we do that with signs, Instagram, just trying to let everyone know when you can, especially when you grind. So I do a lot of like serving practice, or I'll get with one of our D1 guys, and we'll try to grind in the middle of campus so that people can see this like new side of Roundnet and get interested. And that definitely pulls people in as well.
Nice, awesome. Sounds like your club's doing a good job with being visible on campus. Love those ideas. Anyone else want to chime in on just growing membership base in general?
I can go next. I think one main difference between, I guess, like our situation and what Isaiah is describing is we don't have as big of a school as Ohio State does. And so, in my experience, a lot of times, a lot of people that decide to come out for the first few times, in the beginning, especially like in the beginning of a new semester, are looking for which like sport to play. And a lot of people that we end up getting out here are like in other club sports, or they're trying out for other clubs in the beginning. And so one issue that we always have is, as a medium-sized school, how are we going to convince a ton of new freshmen that have so many sports that they can be playing in the beginning of the year? How do we convince them to keep showing up? And I think one thing that I recently learned that we do differently with Spike Ball than other clubs do is most other clubs on campus require like fees, because regardless of whether they're traveling or whatever else it is, a lot of clubs need money funding to like hold these meetings. And for us, at least, like we have, 10, 15 nets we can bring out, and we have all the balls, like emphasizing that it's something that's free, even if that seems like super obvious to us that play every day. Like it's, as long as we provide the paint lines, like there's really nothing more to it. I think emphasizing the fact that like this pickup is free and that there's no, you have no reason to not be able to play. Like there's no, what I'm trying to get at is being able to explain that like you don't need to bring a partner, you don't need to bring a group of friends, like you don't need to know anyone as long as you're willing to show up and play. This is one of the few sports and one of the few club sports that like people are willing to focus on you specifically to get better. And that's another thing I emphasize, especially like during our club fair that we have when people are coming through all different buildings and saying, which sport do I want to play? Emphasizing like it is, at least for Baylor as like a smaller school, it is impossible for someone on Baylor's campus to want to get good at spike ball and not have the ability to, because everyone on the club team is so willing to meet with those people one-on-one, emphasizing like it's literally up to you whether you want to improve at the game. And if this is something that you played in high school and you want more experience, or you just heard about it for the first time, as long as you make that known to the people that are on the club, emphasizing like that their growth is extremely, like it is extremely possible to get good very quickly as long as you put in the time, allowing people to be good at something that's like new. Like it's not like another sport like soccer or basketball where you have to play since you're 5 in order to compete with people in college. It's just a new sport, and emphasizing it's free, and as long as you're willing to play, you will get better. So I think a lot of those allow for success in the beginning.
Nice, I love that. So I think Isaiah's approach, what he described, is a lot more about visibility and kind of being outgoing and very extroverted and reaching out to as many people as possible. And then Tyler's approach, I would summarize as more of like the salesman approach, highlighting the differences and the uniqueness of our sport and the advantages of playing Roundnet versus other club sports when they have so many choices, and not just between different club sports, but just different organizations in general that they can become involved in. I think all freshmen are trying to figure out what they want to do maybe for the next 4 years. So that initial kind of sales pitch is super important. All right, Dylan or Jacob or Ben, you want to add to club growth?
I think they did a great point. I think the only thing I would add is recognizing a lot of organizations are provided the opportunity to include social aspects beyond just Roundnet into a Roundnet club. So if you feel like people aren't buying into Roundnet as much, which is very much a possibility, we have a pretty good core group now of competitive freshmen and people who are going to do that. And we kind of realized that through the first 3 or 4 weeks of campus, who's going to be the pool that we're working with to play with, for the competitive season. But beyond that, can we continue to just find ways to have people invest in Roundnet Club, even if they're not competitive Roundnet members, and we can figure that out as we go. Is the only thing I'd add to that.
Yeah, so I'm going to press you a little bit on that answer. It sounds like you're saying maybe that at Stony Brook, you guys offer other kind of opportunities for involvement in your club other than just strictly playing Roundnet. So I don't know, maybe you have like social events or like pickup football or, other activities, or could you like dive into that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not something we do too much of, and I'd like to do a little bit more. But thinking through aspects, so we offer an e-board, which is the board that runs the club, which is 4 positions, and then we offer an extended board, which is an unofficial version of an e-board where there's social media managers and event coordinators and things of that nature, where people can gain experience doing specific things that looks good for looking and applying to campus internships and other externships and things with other companies. Then the social aspect of like team dinners or just watch parties for different movies or hangout events and style things, where once you kind of recognize these are the people that are coming to play Roundnet, you can do as much advertising as you want, and you can continue to go and push the agenda and see how many people you can get to show up. And I'm not saying not to do that, but once you kind of find that core group, especially at a school like Stony Brook where we don't have hundreds of players to choose from, I like to focus on developing the people that genuinely do want to be there competitively. And then for the people that are there for more of a recreational social experience, what are the ways that we can utilize Roundnet as a tool for them, because they're not there to get to that premier professional level? What ways can we utilize Roundnet as a tool to get them engaged with our club and our opportunity, so they would be willing to attend fundraisers? They're coming and hanging out, they're watching tournaments, they're going to games, even if they're not ones playing in them or looking to get to that next level.
Nice, love that. And this kind of points me to a question that someone had submitted in the form. They were asking for any tips on how to sell your club to students who maybe aren't familiar with spikeball at all. This was more of a problem, I think, several years ago, back when I was involved with college, where the majority of the people I recruited didn't know the rules or maybe hadn't even seen the sport at all. I think nowadays most people are at least familiar at least a baseline level of how to play the game and have seen it before. But what would you say, I guess, Jacob or Ben, do you have any tips on selling it to people who, especially like college freshmen who maybe haven't even seen spikeball before? Why should they come to your club? Is it kind of more about a relationship aspect, or how do you kind of reel those people in?
Yeah, I think what's worked for us is being like personable with them, like having conversations with them when you meet them. It's going to be around, like, you're going to meet them around Roundnet. Like we usually do it at our like student org night, the fair, whatever that is for everyone else. But when we do that, like they know what they're walking towards, the club Roundnet, but they're maybe not so interested. So what works for us is like trying to understand them, get to know them, make them like try to remember us as like people, like remember the faces. So that way, like they'll go back to their dorms that night, be like, okay, who did I go see? I saw club basketball, whatever, club Roundnet. That guy was cool. I wanted to talk to him some more. The game seems cool. I'm going to try it out. I'm going to go see what it's like. And then that's how hopefully like they'll get into it some to start at least. And then as they keep coming out to whatever events, like pickups, practices, any social stuff anyone might do, they'll start to enjoy it some more, and really start feeling included. And it starts with like the first bit, like trying to be a friend for them, because most of them are freshmen. They don't know as many people yet. They're trying to find like people to call their friends. So starting with that first step is like really helpful for us, is what we found.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's really important for the leadership, especially in your college clubs, to remember what it's like when you were a freshman. I think a lot of freshmen, first couple of weeks on campus are anxious about how am I going to make friends and what am I going to do with all my free time, and being that kind of welcoming, personable friend and someone that they know by name and they want to hang out with, whether it's spikeball or not, is I think a huge way to draw people in. Okay, Ben, did you want to add anything before we move on?
No, like you, I can't really relate to, like, everyone kind of knows Roundnet now, so I don't have any good new tips. I'm an old dog.
Cool. Okay, so we'll move on from club growth then and start talking about more member retention. Okay, so you've got all these people, maybe you're OSU and you have now 100 people and coming out to your pickups. What do you do at that point to get people to come back? So getting people to come to try it for the first time is one thing, but then what are some of the strategies that you found useful to get people to continue coming back again and again?
Yeah, I guess I'll take a start. So we try to determine, or I guess at least my approach is figuring out what kind of player I'm dealing with here. So it's obvious that some people really want to work on getting better, and if they do, I push them towards like our pre pickup practice, where they can come and get more competitive games in. Or if people are there just strictly to have fun, then like we, or at least our upper players, will make a really important note to play with these people and like make the games as fun as possible with a lot of rallies, and just really, like, a lot of people at our pickup at least will stand around. I don't know if other clubs get this. They're kind of scared to take that initiative and start a game if they don't know anyone. So just being really hyperactive and being like, oh, there's 4 people, or there's 2 people over there, there's 2 people over there, you guys should play a game right here. And just like kind of pushing them outside their box, and getting them to like make friends at pickup. So I've seen a lot, at least this year for sure, of freshmen who like move on campus and they don't have many friends, and they'll make their friends at pickup. So they'll come here, and this is just a place for them to get together. And that's what we do for just people who are just strictly there to have fun, no interest in competitive, just making sure that these people are always in games, they're never isolated alone. And even if they are in games, that they're like having fun, like we're lifting everyone up, and just facilitating like, just good vibes everywhere. And I think that's about it.
Nice. Yeah, I could definitely relate to that, kind of feeling like a shepherd, almost like, come on now, let's gotta go this way. There's an open net, let's play. Anyone else?
I think offering more than just Roundnet to the club is pretty important. I mean, people, if they join the club, if they join Club Roundnet, they probably want to play. But I mean, that only can take them so far to actually wanting to be like super involved. If you're just playing Roundnet, then maybe they'll get tired of it. Like as the semester goes on, and maybe they don't show up the next semester or the next year. So like doing other things, like whether that's like Dylan said, I think watch parties or cookouts or whatever hangouts. Doesn't have to be like anything like parties or anything. Although that does kind of work for us at least. Doing stuff that gets people like together, whether it's with or without Roundnet, like is pretty important to getting people to keep coming back. Because I mean, at that point, they're making friends. Like I said, they join clubs for friends. They want to see people. They want to know people. So if they just keep coming out, doing anything, doing different things, keeps them interested and engaged and wanting to come back. So
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We talked about on the recruiting side, making that initial relationship and putting a name to a face kind of thing. You talked about using events also though to keep people coming back. I think that's been huge at Georgia. I'm curious what kind of events, maybe Tyler or Ben or Dylan, are there any like specific examples you could give folks on types of events that you've hosted in the past that people have enjoyed or been successful as far as getting the members of your club to become closer and kind of deepen those already existing relationships?
I can speak to a couple examples that have worked well. I think like just as like a general call out, right? Like having like an idea of what's next for the players, whether it's growing or like just belonging and connecting more with people is like obviously great like overarching thing that everyone's mentioned here. Two types of events that worked really well back in school, work everywhere that I'm aware of is having individual style tournaments where you don't need any pressure to sign up and bring a friend. You can of course bring your own friend and bring a whole group of friends to come play, but it's really accessible for everybody to sign up on their own, and then you pair people off and they get to play with lots of different players over the day. That's probably the most social, and for those familiar with it, also competitively not the most like rigorous type of event. It's really like a very heavily social event where it can almost feel like pickup, but over the course of the day you almost have like people rising at the top, middle, bottom to play more at their level. So that's a really cool way to get people playing events. And the other one that is similarly low friction, just sign up on your own, is a hat tournament. So a little more structure where you get the same partner for the whole event. But those are two examples that were some of the earliest memories I have of events on campus where you don't need to put any legwork in. You just need to show up on your own and get everybody else to do the same thing.
Nice. Yeah, Georgia, we're still doing King of the Net, and we do an annual hat tournament every year. So those are both great tools. Dylan or anyone else want to chime in on this one?
Yeah, I'm happy to chime in. I think a lot of what we do at Stony Brook too relates to issues faced by students at the college. So we have over 400 clubs at Stony Brook University. So there's a lot of other events and things that exist as facets to go get engaged and do other things that you enjoy. So the first thing is just getting to know everyone who comes to a practice. If someone comes to a practice and I see them walking around campus, I make a point of it to know at least enough about them to at least know their name and wave to them and say hi and stop them and continue to build that community, because that's the biggest piece of it for me at face value is just, do you feel valued when you come to this space, Roundnet or otherwise, at the door? Do you feel good when you come here, and can we figure that out? But then going off of that, Stony Brook School in Long Island. So we have a very big population of students that come from the city, students that come from other places where they're used to being able to get around without public transport or without cars and vehicles. And the nature of Stony Brook doesn't really enable them to do too much off campus or outside of campus. So having, veterans and upperclassmen in a structured way, not like a, hey, come get in my car kind of thing, but like a, hey, this is what's going on. We have, spike ball tournaments going on in local areas. We have a lot of Long Island Roundnet pickup going on. So there's like specific Roundnet stuff, but then also, what are some sport events in the area, or what's some things that are going on that we can go to as a group and continue to build those friendships and connections. That's the easiest way to retain someone, is to make them feel valued and want to come back to the space. And Roundnet is not always the greatest way to do that, even if it's the Roundnet club. Really, those competitive players are going to want to be there regardless because they want to get better. And if you give them the reason, that's really all it takes. But beyond that, just making sure that you show individuals that there's more to Roundnet Club than Roundnet in whatever facet that takes.
Thanks. Love that answer. I think we're starting to see there's a lot of skills that are required to lead a successful college club, right? You need to be extroverted, you need to be personable, you need to be friendly, you need to be a salesperson, right? So to your first point, Dylan, and one of the first questions, there's a lot of opportunities here for professional development, beyond college. Great skills for life to have. So let's move on to the more maybe interesting questions for the competitive folks on the call. One of the more common questions was, how do you deepen engagement of your players, right? So you have this solid membership base now, they're coming out more consistently, but how do you get them to really engage more in the sport of Roundnet? And I see this kind of being a two-pronged question. You have your population who's never done competitive Roundnet, but are looking to make that step, or how do you make them, how do you encourage them to make that step? And then the second group are kind of your younger vets who maybe they're already familiar with competitive Roundnet, maybe they played up like a college tournament or two. How do you get them to even get more invested and really take ownership and accountability of their own development as a player? So I want to start with Tyler on this one, because I know he's talked a lot about developing players already, but also I'm interested to hear your response, Tyler, because you mentioned, and Isaiah as well, you kind of have two separate faces to your club, right? You have 2 days a week where it's just casual pickup on the quad, and then 2 days a week that are competitive. So how do you encourage people to make that transition and show up to the competitive practices? And then for the people who are already in the competitive practices, how do you get them to start being more involved in playing more tournaments and really want to get better themselves?
Yeah, so I think that first part of the question that you asked is maybe a best place to start. I think something that some schools that are bigger may not be able to do, but again, being a little bit smaller school, something that we get away with is I don't need to do a lot of convincing of the recreational crowd, hey, you should come to competitive pickup, because a large percentage of the people that are showing up consistently start to get an idea of, hey, when are intramurals? Are there Baylor run tournaments, which we do once a semester. We do two tournaments a year as well, just to like come play against some better players where we'll have some of the veteran players mixed up with other players. But I think a big thing is, like I was trying to say earlier, is that there's room, like whatever you want to put into Spikeballs, whatever you're going to get out. If you want to show up twice a week and have a ton of fun with different friends and play against a new competition of people that don't play very often, this is a great place for you. And if you're looking to become the next best college player and you want to find some sport, some niche sport that you can get really good at, we have people offering that to you. And so I think the buy-in, a lot of times, like we like to talk about like buying into the idea of Spikeball, a lot of that comes with them being competitive people in general, and then realizing there's more than just showing up twice a week for fun. But you have to like make that very clear. So that's what I always respond. I don't try pushing it on any students, but I'm like, hey, there are tons of people here that are playing tournaments all during the summer. Like some of us tried making the pro division, some of us don't. Some just try getting premier. Like there's all these different rankings. There's always all these different opportunities for you to grow and meet new people. And I want everyone to have a chance of doing that. And so if you would like to show up to competitive practice, which is what I do in the beginning of the year, I allow them to come and play against some better players, playing some good games. Then I start to gauge whether or not they want to come back. And one thing that, again, we get to do as a smaller school, which is, I think, kept us in a more competitive scene when it comes to college nationals, is that I know this happened when I first came to Baylor with Caleb Cummings and other leaders at Baylor, but during the school year, I will personally meet with a few students that are freshmen or sophomores that really want to grind or practice certain skills, and I personally meet with them outside of practice times to do drills and racquetball courts. So that's been one of the things that's driven us the most, is like we kind of have an ongoing saying like, hey, if you really want to get good, you have no excuse, because Tyler will show up with you and make you play, 10 hours a week. And it's kind of an ongoing joke, but the idea is like being able to invite people that do want to get better. Like, hey, obviously sometimes it's tough playing with players that are veterans that don't want to play down with you. Like they want to have their own group, but being able to build up weaker players to then become the talent or the group that you play with is a good strategy. I'm very much against keeping a club very top heavy with the best players. Sure, that may be best for one weekend out of the year, which is the very end, but for the whole entire year during school, I personally have always wanted the idea that I would rather make, out of the 15 or 16 people that we have consistently show up twice a week for competitive drills, I want to make sure that the 15th and 16th player gets so much better to where when the top player has to play with the 15th or 16th best player, they're is hopefully not as big of a gap as there was in the beginning of the year. And I think that leads to a lot more competitiveness because the players at the bottom feel that they have a chance to make the top. Where if you separate the two groups to such an extreme where they don't get to intermix, I think you lose retention because people go, well, there's no chance I get there, and they don't want me to get better.
Nice. I like that answer. Almost a little bit too much. You might have to bleep this part out because you're giving out too many good secrets for all the competition out there. No, just joking, obviously. Okay. How about Isaiah? I know you all have kind of a similar setup with the competitive and the casual groups on different days. So, what does it look like for you guys? How do you help people make that transition?
Yeah, so we actually do the same day. So we'll do competitive pickup like an hour or an hour and a half before regular pickup, just for anyone who's free. And the reason I started doing this is, for one, if they're already coming, what's an hour earlier? So it's just more spike ball for those wanting to play. And then for the people who aren't necessarily into competitive, when they show up at 6 o'clock for our regular pickup, they're seeing competitive games happening everywhere. So a lot of people show up and be like, oh, I didn't know pickup started already. And we'll talk about like what competitive looks like and how they can get into it. So a lot of people start coming early just because they get to play more around that. And then we just throw them into the deep end with competitive pickup. So we'll do drills. We do a lot of peppering. And then for those who want it, one thing that our kids loved this year that really caught me off guard was serving. One kid learned how to hit a cut, and like this group of friends, and they're all like trying to get the best cut serve. So every week they show up to pick up and they'll send us videos in the group chat. Like they went crazy when I sent them that slow-mo of Vinny that he just posted. Oh my gosh. But yeah, the way that I've been trying to promote competitive is just putting it before pickup. So when people show up for regular pickup, they can see that this is just available for them whenever. And then we also advertise what Tyler does as meeting one-on-one, whether that be peppering or just labbing or whatever that may be. But yeah, a lot of what Tyler does, but for the main part, I just have it before pickup. And then we'll do practices for like this week, we have sectionals next week. So we'll do a lot of like off day practices just with our sectional squad. But we'll open it up to the public if they want to come and see what it's like.
Nice. I love that. It's like a little tip, like a little thing, right? Have your casual pickup right before, but I'm sure that's really effective. So love that tip. So you also mentioned drills and pepper and running different things. So I kind of want to ask about club practices more specifically. Could someone paint a picture? Maybe Jacob, if you could go here. What do your practices look like? Are they pretty structured? How do you kind of break it up in terms of like more focused practice versus like playing pickup, and how do you motivate people to like buy into that? If you're not just doing pickup, how do you get people to buy into that idea?
Yeah, our practices are structured kind of like an hour of drills, specifically doing whatever we want that day. If it's defense, if it's setting, serve, receive, hitting, serving is usually on the back burner of that because it's easy to learn. You can honestly learn it on your own. But we try to emphasize like those important skills that really can like win or lose you games. Those are kind of that's what we really want like our players to win, because if they have that base of everything being clean and good with everything except serving, and then they can develop serving later, then we'll have good players. So we'll do that for like the first hour. And then after that, we open it up to pickup, and we can kind of just play. They can work on what they just did. Like if they were working on hitting a pull shot, then in pickup, they'll try to do that in like game settings. We encourage them to mess up or try what they were just trying. If they mess up, it's okay. It's pickup, and you're working to get that better. But yeah, that and sorry, what's the second part of the question?
So I was wondering, I've had, early on we had some experience with this, and some other people were saying they do too through their form responses, where you try to have a more structured practice, like you're saying you guys do like an hour of focused, practice with a specific intention, and maybe you're running drills and whatnot. Do you ever have any pushback? People are just say, man, why can't we just play pickup? I like playing pickup, and they don't want to do the drills. Do you ever have any sort of pushback or problems with that?
Yeah, we do. I feel like newer players kind of just want to play until they really buy in to wanting to actually like be better. It's going to be a little rough with that. It's going to be what has worked with me is like, again, it's what is kind of my theme, but like getting to know them as people, being friends with them. Like if they hang out with me, I'm one of the more competitive players here. They hang out with me more often. They'll see me play more often. They'll buy into it a little bit more. I think exposing them to like what it can be can like unlock a door for them. Be like, okay, wow, that was really cool. I want to learn how to do that. You just hit a serve really wide. I want to try to do that. We just hosted a tournament here with the East Roundnet series, and we had Ryan Gross and Owen Littman playing in the finals against each other. That's pretty good exposure to high-level Roundnet right there in front of all of our freshmen. And like they were oohing and ahhing when Owen was acing everybody, and Ryan was getting crazy touches. So things like that, I think, can like help your players get to that next step. That's like, oh, I don't really know if I want to commit to this, but then like they see it and they're like, wow. I think, it doesn't look that hard to get there because it really isn't. And like, I think it's a niche sport. It's easy to get good at. Like, I want to get good at something because, that's how people are. They want to be the best at something. So yeah, just like kind of exposing them to what it can be is what helps us.
Nice. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, just to add on to some of the notes Jacob had around like practice, I think some other really helpful tools when there was like a particular like drill or skill focused on before going into pickup was maybe modifying rules in like a small way so that it incentivizes people to execute the skill. So like as the example of like Jacob mentioning working on a pull shot, if you just make it, an extra point, if you get a put away on a pull, right? Just trying to create environments where it forces people to like take those risks and like feel safe messing things up. And I think just to emphasize that one other note around practice being that it's not about winning the practice games. I think a lot of the folks, Isaiah especially mentioned, like you're not like blowing people out when you're doing like showcase money match games. You're making them as fun as possible. And I think similarly in the practice setting, taking the opportunity to like not worry about winning and make sure even for players that are not the best that they don't need to worry about winning. They should worry about pushing the boundaries of their skills, and doing that in like that structured environment is really valuable. The only other note I wanted to add on like buy-in for like, oh, I just want to play pickup is I think one of the biggest challenges, especially in growing a club, right? Like some groups are really big, some are smaller. Some clubs in the US have the luxury of like needing to make cuts because they don't have enough space to accommodate people. Is wherever you are at and your like club size is just trying to find like a clear definition of someone buying in, generally speaking. So for someone who's coming to practice and isn't really excited about it, like they probably already got past the first step of like saying they're committed as a member, whether it's they're showing up consistently or if they're a dues paying member. And so just making sure that anybody that's like past that first step, that you really encourage them to sustain that buy-in is really important. It's a different story if like the person just wants to play casually and never wants to come to practice and take it seriously. That's totally okay. But I think like helping people like know that they're committing to it and supporting their commitment is a really important step in like getting that buy-in for taking practice and training seriously.
Nice. And Dylan, I'm curious, since you're a coach, I know you're more kind of in the earlier process, it sounds like, of kind of making that transition to a more competitive club there at Stony Brook. But have y'all experimented with running different drills? Do you have any recommendations on specific drills that you've had success with? Ben mentioned like modified games. We've mentioned Pepper. Anyone really, any specific drills that you recommend, and kind of how do you make them fun and make people motivated to do them?
Yeah, it's definitely been a newer thing for me, but I've been growing up my whole life playing sports, being athletic, doing stuff like that. So it's all the same principles apply. It's just a different ball that we're hitting and throwing around. Especially for the competitive guys, I like to get to know them first, so this doesn't come off as aggressive as it sounds. But I really work them very hard to be like, okay, yes, you want to come and play pickup. Yes, you want to come play a game, but you can't touch this serve. And I say that with a lot of humility because I go to tournaments and lose most of my games, and it's very frustrating. But you like it at that level. It's like if you really are here to be competitive, and that's why you're coming to a designated competitive practice, we have so much more work to do before we get to that point. Peppering is huge. It's probably the most important thing that exists in the game, because it's every single skill. It's serving, it's setting, it's defense, all in one, and you just do it back and forth with two people, and have them really continue to recognize, especially with each other, because the drill doesn't work if somebody's screwing it up. And obviously that's part of it. You're learning, and it's not a horrible thing to drop a set or drop a serve, whatever. But you take accountability for not only yourself when you're peppering, it's also another partner. So giving yourself accountability to another player or another group of people. You don't want to go and show up to a net and be like, dang, this is not working because I'm not at the level I want to be. It gives you that motivation and that fire to kind of continue, as long as you, again, continue to provide that supportive environment. I don't offer anyone hundreds of dollars, but I do offer to buy them lunch. Sometimes I'll do serving lines. If anybody can get an ace on me, you got lunch coming your way, stuff like that. So you build it into a competition, especially when, I get them a little hype and I get, tips and pointers for sure, but get them going, get them excited about it, and make them want to take points off me because I'm very proud at practice, and I show them that, give them that energy, give them something to strive for, and show them that I'm certainly not untouchable and that they can do exactly the things that I'm doing and that we're all doing together. Just continue to come and show up practice and deserve it and earn it. I've probably spent too much money on lunch now at this point. I think I need to continue to practice my peppering and things. But really setting that bar, so it doesn't have to be something specific. I do have a whole list of specific drills that I like to do. I don't really have names for them or anything, so it's not like something I could really say too much. Thousands on lunch. No, I wouldn't say I spent thousands, but it's definitely at least over $100 at this point. But finding drills that work on specific skills for each individual player that you're working with has been the most important thing for me. People hate to work on setting because it's like not as exciting as smacking the ball really hard, but showing them clips of high level round net and showing these really far off net sets and these crazy running sets and diving things, proving the value of why that's important is also pretty critical. So if anyone does want to connect more about that, I'd be happy to share more specific lists of drills and things. It's hard to say names and describe them when they kind of just exist in my brain. But picking one skill and then building a modified, I wouldn't even call it a modified game, building modified situations around that is how I do it. So if you see a cool play, break down that play, put your players where those players are, have them hit that ball and bring it back to the net, stuff like that.
All right, thanks for that answer. Loved it. So Isaiah coming off mute. Did you want to add something?
No, I don't know. I don't think I came off mute. My bad.
All right, no worries. We can move on then to the next question. Is probably the meatiest one and definitely the most common one that I've been asked, but also that I saw submitted in the form. So we're starting to talk about developing players, and especially in the fall semester, but really any time of year. I think probably all of you guys can relate to this unique challenge of maybe you're still trying to grow your club, or even if you're not necessarily focusing on growth, but you're going to have a skill gap in college, right? You have your freshmen, your sophomores who just started playing competitively, and then you might have juniors or seniors who are pushing premier, maybe even pushing pro. How do you appropriately challenge everyone, right? So especially for those of you who have structured practices, do you ever have tension with the best players? They don't want to be playing with new people. They want to work on their own skills, and the new people, maybe they want to be playing the advanced people more, or maybe some people feel like that's too hard and they hate losing and they only play with the new people. So how do you kind of balance the challenge of growing your club, but also making sure that everyone is getting better that wants to at the same time?
I've found success being able to do both of those in two parts. So first, when we do, besides the recreational club, and then when we hold a practice where it's mainly drill focused, there are multiple times each week where, maybe not multiple, but at least 1 or 2 times each week, where we either play on a weekend or there's some group chat. There's always someone playing spike ball on campus. And one thing that I've made it very clear, regardless of what your skill level is, and this goes for me as well, is if you are consistently showing up to drill, you make that, or you make the list of people that are invited. So one thing we did last year before, leading up to college nationals, was, okay, I get, school gets busy and everything, but I want to reward people that show up to drill to play. So regardless of whether or not you're one of the top players. Like there's usually like a group chat of like 4 to 8 players. And if you're someone who wants to drill and is showing that wants to get better, you make that group. So I think prioritizing people that are actually putting in work, regardless of how busy their schedule is, like whether they're doing that by themselves or with a club member, whoever's putting in work gets like what we call like first dib as to like who plays outside of club practices and who gets like the equipment. That's worked really well for us because it drives everyone to get better. And then secondly, to answer the question of how do you deal with the skill gap? I think honestly, a lot of times it's really up to the leader of the club to identify what the purpose of the club is, right? So some people's purpose can be, I want to assemble a squad for college nationals that is so strong that we have a chance of winning every year, and that's a great goal. And for some people, that's all it is. For me, like I mentioned earlier, my goal, obviously, I want to compete at the end of the year, but I think the best way to get there is by building up the lower and mid-level players. That way they return. I think one thing that I value is being able to compete every year, not every few years when you have a few top players. So it's convincing the top players, because I'm in a position of leadership, all the other premier players saying, hey guys, we're only going to be so good as our co-ed guy or as our third team guy. Like we need those people to be very good. So having all the people that are at the top buying in and saying we need these younger players to grow up to be able to have the club run on, I think you need the buy-in from those players. And I find that very easy to do as long as you make that your number one goal. You can't, sometimes you got to sacrifice, like this isn't going to be the top 4 players playing twice a week by themselves. We're going to take a bit of a hit and get the lower players to start to develop. That way we can have bigger groups of pickup and have a stronger club in general with more return for next year. So focusing on development rather than just winning that specific year allows you to always compete and has a very good culture for where the people at the bottom want to get better and the people at the top want them to get better as well.
Nice. Yeah, I love that kind of longer term vision. I think a lot of people, especially at college stage, are very short sighted. They're just focused on this week or, what's coming up next month. But that sort of long term plan and communicating that and you make an important point. Like it can't just be you that has that idea. Like you've got to almost be constantly reminding kind of your best players or your seniors or whatever that hey, this is our strategy and we all need to continue to involve the new players and not just worry about ourselves only, because what's going to happen next year and the next year after that. And then you're leaving a legacy too. I think that's for me when I was in college, that was one of the biggest things that I wanted to accomplish, is make sure that I'm leaving a legacy. And we can talk more about that at the end in terms of leadership transitions and things like that. But I'm sure other people want to chime in on this complicated topic. So who wants to go next?
Yeah, I can add in a bit. I think like very, very bluntly, the strength of like any club, community, organization in Roundnet is like very strictly tied to its ability to invest in like the newest player or like the worst player. And so like Tyler gave a couple of different examples of how to like do that with different mechanisms, getting people incentivized. But I think like in particular, just top down, like there's maybe like a bit of a false dichotomy, I'd say, that you're trading off like short-term gains and long-term gains. I'd say that's like true to like an extent, but only in the very, very short term. In that, to the example of having more than 3 or 4 or 5 high-level players that you can train with, you start training people up and you have more people at a higher caliber over time than when someone has, study abroad, when someone graduates, when someone, just has a crazy course load or maybe tweaks an ankle. All of a sudden the pool of players that you can play with as a high-level player that will help you grow as a player and challenge you is all of a sudden much bigger. And so by continuously looking at all those players that are bought in, that are part of your organization, and saying, how can we get these players to be better, not just so that they can be better, but in established ways so that they can challenge me, a high-level player, really does serve kind of like all sides of the goal there. And like just to dip my toe outside of like college for a moment, like that is, I think like this is the core problem for Roundnet all around the world is like, I'm a good player and I want to get better. Should I care about other people? What's in it for me? And I think there's a lot of examples in college and outside of college where it does pay off to be investing. So that's just my small soapbox moment.
Yeah, I love that. Iron sharpens iron in a nutshell. Anyone else want to go?
I think Ben's point really kind of hits the nail on the head, that back to even that point of it being thankless, like you really have to just find the people that really want to be in it for them. And as much as it is an opportunity to develop professionally and personally and grow and engage and have fun, like anything in life, as much energy and time as you're dedicating to it, and however you're finding that come back to you, whether that's literally physically through genuine value or you're just enjoying the process, is the most impactful way to kind of see that happen.
Yeah, Ezra, do you have a question or want to add something?
I guess, yeah, more like question. So I guess like we're a little limited on like field like availability. So like we could go out to a field and play pickup whenever, but it's hard to like have organized practice time outside of like 2 hour a week practice sessions. And so there's a bunch of people who come every week. Sometimes like people come in twice a week. But I guess like how do you focus improving players who are not good but are there every week, outside of like just doing the stuff? I think it's like, do you tell them like, hey, you have to do some individualized practice if you want to get better? Or if they don't want to do that, how do you really maximize how much you're getting out of people? Because we have some people who come every week and either they're just like not getting better or they get better very slowly. And it's like they're trying the drills, but they just can't do it. Or like we'll do pepper, but they really can't even pepper. And so it's like, how do you really hone in the time that you have, if it's 2 hours a week of like drills and 2 hours a week of pickup, to really improve the players who are not there?
Yeah, that's a great question. Who wants to take a stab at that?
I'll give it a shot. It's something I've been working a lot with, especially as a newer kind of coach in the space. There are players that want to play, and the reality is they really struggle with a lot of that's crazy, a lot of the basic skills and a lot of just the things that go into it. It seems like more of a twofold issue as well, in terms of spacing and then the actual issue of the practice itself. So for spacing, like advocating for yourself is the biggest thing with your university or with your location. And the best way to advocate, especially as a higher education professional myself, is with data. So recognize who's coming to your practices, take attendance reports, and show that you're having an impact for the university, for the school to be doing something, and be passionate about it. And hopefully that kind of turns around. You can only do so much at the end of the day. But whatever you can do is important. And then when it comes to other things, like people who can't even handle the peppering drills or things like that, that are the most important things, to some degree, like you do want to be able to say, listen, if we don't have enough time here, you have to go and study. It's kind of like a class. If you're struggling with something in class and you don't have enough time in class to get it done, you go to office hours, you go to a TA, you go speak to someone who can help you continue to learn things. So do your best to break things down in meaningful ways. If someone doesn't know how to set, don't just say, well, you take the ball and you hit it like this. Show them, the real reality of setting a ball is each motion of your hand, setting your feet, getting to a ball, all the things that kind of play into that. Have them hold the ball and throw it different places, really get a feel for it as much as you can within that time. Give them external resources to go follow and watch, how to round that kind of stuff on YouTube, all those, fundamental kind of game changer things. And then I would try to make yourself available outside of scheduled practice times to say, if you do have field space, hey, anyone want to come meet at this field? I'll be here at 8 o'clock for an hour doing my own serving or doing my own hitting if anyone wants to come and work on stuff. But very similar to any mindset in life, when you're trying to learn something, if you don't have enough time to learn it in one specific section, take advantage of resources, but also continue to make time to practice the things that you need a little bit more practice with, because by doing something over and over and over, that has been proven day in and day out in life, you will get better at it eventually. It does just take some people a little bit longer.
Yeah, the only specific call out I wanted to add to that, I think Dylan, that was perfect as far as like the analogy for getting extra support outside of school or outside of class of TAs and stuff is trying to give people equipment. I think, as for your example, it's probably a newer player that maybe doesn't have their own equipment. So if you've got a club ball, or if another player just has a personal ball, they can spare them and give them a couple of simple things to go do, and just have their hand on a Roundnet ball between practices. Where some people, I feel like sometimes it's like a weird point of pride that like even high level players are like, I haven't touched a ball in a week, and it's like, well, like that's not a recipe for getting better. It's a recipe for just staying the same. So especially for new players, letting them just build up that touch. I think especially for something like Pepper, it's usually like a lot of touch, maybe hand-eye like not being the strongest. And so yeah, just equipping them and, you know, like Dylan said, providing them all the resources and one-on-one time or small group sessions is all you can hope for, as long as they want it, right? Like I think that sometimes is the big thing, is encouraging them. And I think there's been a lot of good notes today about making sure they feel like really supported and they got friendly faces to help them out.
Isaiah, I saw you come off mute. Did you want to say something, or was that just a glitch again?
I didn't think I came off mute, but I mean, I'll add.
Good.
I think what Ben said is like just perfect. Just really important we hand out as much gear as we can, whether that's like literally a singular ball, and we'll show them how to just like set to each other and try to set the ball really high and then keep control of it, or maybe it's hitting the ball into a corner or whatever it may be. We try to give out sets. We recently just got a nice chunk of sets, so we'll give them out to trusted members. But doing that, just like you really can see who's really like interested in getting better and who needs to be worked with. And it especially helps on our practice days, because I know exactly like who needs to work, or like I know exactly what I need to work on with a specific person. So whether that be like if he's setting with his hand flat, if he sends me videos of that, or when he's hitting, he doesn't drop his shoulder or something like that. So again, giving out, if you have the gear to give out, I think it's amazing for your club, especially in bringing retention back for competitive players. That's a way to definitely keep someone into the competitive scene if they have that mental note of, okay, I got given this, I need to use it, or at least need to return it. So they'll at least come back one more time.
There you go. Hopefully. Tyler, go ahead.
Yeah, just want to say this real quick to build off what Isaiah and Ben both said. I think one thing we did last year that was super successful, that was the first time I did it, was after our competitive practices, like normally there would be a few players that would say, like I would notice that they really enjoyed doing a drill. They started to like get the urge to practice something, but they don't have the equipment. So one thing that I would do is I always brought an extra net in my car to the pickup. And sometimes there's multiple people, so I'll explain exactly how that works. But for one person a week, I would say, hey, like, do you actually want like to be able to do something over the weekend or before our next practice? Like, is there something you want to work on? And if they gave me something specific that they thought they were going to work on, and we came together with a plan, I would give them the 4 or 5 balls that I had in my car and that net, and then they would return it the next session. So that would kind of go to one person specifically that showed the most interest that wanted to do it. And then there were a few times early on where multiple people wanted that. And so what I did is I said, okay, let's work on let's take a drill that you guys can all do, and you can go meet up, and before we leave today, like come up with a time and tell me, hey, us three are going to be at this location using this equipment, this is what we want to work on. And I would start like giving out like my personal net to those players before the next time we came back. So that gave accountability for them to actually work on something, and it didn't just feel like I was telling people to go do something that they didn't want to do because they would ask me. But I made that very clear. Hey, there's equipment for you to use. As long as you're going to use it, I want to know what you're using it for. So that way I feel good about giving you my net, but I'd love for you to bring it next practice as well, which also then in turn make sure that they show up again because they have something to give back. So I found that to be a really successful way of getting new players experience, and not, even though we didn't have the most equipment, like the equipment was always being put to use.
Right, and you're not using official field reservations or time that Ezra mentioned he probably doesn't have. You mentioned, Tyler, earlier also with the idea of UGA, we call them practice pods, but sort of an experienced player leading a smaller group of maybe 3 to 4 newer players who want to work on something specific or just get better in general. And that's informal. You can meet anywhere on campus. Don't have to have it's not an official club practice, but it's a smaller group setting where you can work on those individuals who maybe need more time outside of team practices to get some extra practice in. Okay, so thanks for the question, y'all. I know we have a small audience here, but keep those questions coming. But if not, I'll keep rolling along here. So that was a big question I want to tackle. I've got just a couple more kind of easy questions, so we can go through these a little bit more quickly. But we've had some questions about fundraising, especially clubs who are looking to get into the competitive scene and start traveling to tournaments and whatnot. So in your experience, and I'll start with Jacob, how does your club at JMU fundraise? Do you get money from your school? Do you raise additional funds through other kinds of events, and what kind of events are those? Also, if you could touch on membership dues. Some people have already mentioned, I know Tyler said they don't have any membership dues, but what do your dues look like?
Our dues are $40 for the base, and then if they express interest, they want to play tournaments, play competitively, then it's another 25 for like registrations, travel, all that stuff. But outside of those, our fundraising consists of like group raise events. Like, I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but it's basically like a website where like they partner with like different places, like Krispy Kreme, for example. That's what we usually do. They'll set up a thing for us. If we give out a code and a link, people buy donuts from that link. We get a portion of that. Krispy Kreme gets that. It's like unbelievably easy to set up and use. You just click your mouse a couple times, send it to people, and then boom, you're getting donuts, you're getting money. That's great. Also here at JMU, I don't know if it's a thing anywhere else, but they offer opportunities for clubs and organizations to volunteer, like at concession stands at athletic events. We usually do basketball games because that's when most people are free and there's not really that much going on because it's cold out here. Yeah, they let you like run the concession booth for a game, and then they'll give you like anywhere between like $500 or $2,000, depending on how many like transactions you guys had, how much business you brought in from there. That's a good way to do that. We also have started selling a little bit of shirts and merchandise. We have a bunch of old like club shirts from I don't know how long ago, since the club was like founded. We're selling those, trying to make whatever profit we can off of those. Whatever jerseys we might have, we'll sell those off. Try to just make whatever we can from what we have.
Awesome. Sounds like you guys have multiple different revenue streams there. I love that. I've never heard of group raise. Is that what you called it? Group raise?
Yeah, group raise.
All right. So I'm learning something too here. Anyone else want to pitch in how they fundraise? Do you do anything different from JMU? Justin, was that a new question, or did you want to help answer?
No, I actually wanted to ask about group raise. So
Okay.
in my club, at FIU Roundnet, we have this problem where we're trying to fundraise a lot of the time, but sometimes we find ourselves that we come up short. So I wanted to touch in more with the group raises. Like, how do you actually come in contact, like, with those places? Like, is it like through email, through like their Instagram, or like how is it? Because I'm actually very interested in that.
With group raise, it is actually like unbelievably easy. Like, you don't have to talk to anyone. All you have to do is like sign up and then set it up, like put your whatever email information, all that. And then you pick a time to do this. And then after that, they'll give you whatever money you raised. It honestly is like the easiest thing to do.
And that is an app or a website, or
It's a website.
yeah.
But there's also things like not on group raise, but I know Chipotle, there's Qdoba, there's Panda Express. If you go on their websites, you can set up like fundraiser nights. People can go into the restaurant on a certain day during a certain time. You show them whatever QR code or scan or flyer through your club, and then like they'll give you the same thing, like same portions of the revenue that they get from that time using that. It's also, again, really easy to set up. That one's not through group raise though. It's more like their own websites.
Right. So that's more reaching out to individual businesses. I think a lot of places call them percentage nights, or it might have a different name for it, but essentially you're sharing some small percent of their sales. Sometimes the customers have to mention your club, and other places they'll just give you a flat like 5% or whatever it is of total sales that night. It's pretty sweet. Anyone else have other ideas for fundraising or membership dues? You do them differently. I like. I think Jacob mentioned too. He has kind of two different tiers for membership. Other people do tiers, or how do you handle it?
I'll go. I have nothing to do. We don't do any membership dues. We're fortunate enough to have a free club. So I guess we'll do dues if we travel, it's on you. If we have sectionals, and we didn't get like a discount from winning, then we'll do what's on you. But our biggest fundraising event is just tournaments. We try to do one charity tournament, which we make no money from, and then we do one fundraising tournament per semester. So this year we're doing like a Halloween tournament where we'll have food and hot chocolate, and you come in costume. It's like a fun tournament. We're hoping this year to open it to more schools to make it like an Ohio event instead of just an Ohio State event to raise money for campus in our club, and then we'll use those funds for natties and if we were to travel for any sectionals. But luckily they're pretty close. But yeah, we do one per semester, and then we also try to host a sectionals. I know they just changed how that works, so I think you need to win now to host a sectionals, which is kind of a cool idea. So I'm curious to see how that goes moving forward. But historically, Ohio State has hosted the spring sectionals, so that's allowed us to get a good chunk of change and help like get jerseys or sign up for nationals or travel or buy nets and paints and stuff like that. But our biggest fundraising is just hosting tournaments, just trying to use our facilities. And then another thing is, I know a lot of people sell jerseys. We actually sell jerseys for exactly the amount that we need to make them, because in my mind, it's more important to get out as many jerseys as possible to these players, because just owning a jersey is so cool. I remember I was so excited to get my first jersey. So we want it to be as publicly available for everyone. So we try to go with the cheapest option and just ship them out so that everyone can get one. And I mean, getting a jersey is like, our retention rate has been insane. Like, I think if every person that's gotten a jersey has wanted to play competitive and show off that they're a Ohio State club athlete. But yeah, that is all from me.
Awesome. What about Ben? Do you have any ideas for clubs how to raise some funds?
I mean, most of the same. I think like comes down to like what the goals are. So in the same way we talked a lot about like player development and community development. If the goals are you want to send everybody to a tournament or get everybody, you could even like do a thing where you get people jerseys that if they can't afford them but they want to rep the squad, you can raise funds for that. So I kind of just like to work backwards usually with like whatever the club is, whether it's thinking about like the college era for me, it was a lot of like getting gas because we were in Rochester, having to drive pretty far to get to most events and tournaments. So is getting people to chip in a little bit that way. I don't know if I'm out of bounds here, but I feel like the other like huge thing to go, and when I think about like raising funds for clubs, is like getting into the piggy bank. Like, you guys are spending tens of thousands of dollars, and not everybody, but most people are spending so much on school, and there's like a specific line item for student activities. And if you go through the arduous work that we talked about at the top of this call around paperwork and getting yourself a legitimate club on campus that's a legit sport, or legit club even, you usually get opportunities to tap that piggy bank that you put your own money into to get put into Roundnet. So I feel like maybe that's like underrated and it only happens once here, but doing the for us, it was like the spring like college budget cycle, and then saying, hey, we want to go to these tournaments and spend this money, and then the student government would say, that sounds good, like we'll give you this much, you can cover the rest. So just wanted to tout that for sure.
Yeah. I don't think we've talked about that. Yeah, that's definitely a major source for UGA is we get allocated funds every year from the school. I'm sure maybe Dylan could shed some light on any advice for that process, or is that a thing at your school?
Yeah, it is. I actually, so as a student, I served on our student government on the probationary budget committee for undergraduate student government. That's a lot of words, but basically what it means is new clubs that are getting founded on campus get put in a probationary budget period where they can apply to up to a certain amount of funds, and that would review those requests and provide them for them. After a certain number of time being in that period, then they get moved up to a line budget, which is even more money they have access to. As Ben mentioned, the way that worked at Stony Brook is everyone does pay an undergraduate student activity fee that gets put into a pool, and then the student government can selectively decide in a process based on policy and whatever, who's able to access those funds. We don't do a lot of fundraising because we have not only a club budget that we're able to apply for, but then specific grants for travel, for equipment, for assets, for things like that, that allow us to function as a organization without really needing to do too much. I think tournament fundraisers and different events are probably the biggest way to do things. Even things like a lot of people do Krispy Kreme, where they'll go buy donuts and then sell them in our student activity center, things like that. kind of like selling the candy bars at school type of stuff. So finding ways to do that is super important. But if you are fortunate enough to have a student government that exists in your space that allows you to do something like that, those opportunities are super helpful because it's more money than honestly we know what to do with most of the time if we're not traveling.
Nice. I would definitely encourage people to take advantage of that opportunity to get money directly from your school. So last question here. As many of you guys are seniors or looking to graduate very shortly, how do you specifically, but your club in general, think about longevity of your club and leaving your legacy and transitioning your leadership year to year? Do you have any apprehension about that process, or what steps have you kind of taken to make that transition go smoothly and continue to see your club be successful long after you're gone? And anyone
I'm fortunate in that I work here now, so this is what I'm doing. I get to be the coach and advisor. But for anyone who's not in that position, I think the most important thing, and I think everyone's kind of touched on it as we've gone through what's happening, build up those younger players, show them there's value in this, and get them invested as much as you are. You only need 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 people to really say this is what we want to do and continue to build upon that. But then also to find who that point person is, whether it's someone in your campus recreation or you have a faculty advisor. Most clubs can't exist without those people. To have them truly buy in, because sometimes clubs will have them and they exist, but they're not really a part of the organization. Make sure you're reaching out to those people, have those people be invested in what you're doing, because turnover from year to year, I mean, if your club has 300 plus people in it, it's hard to say everyone's just going to no longer want to do it all of a sudden. But especially when you're trying to get off the ground and things are bouncing back and forth, you have one bad e-board that could kind of ruin your club's entire momentum. So find out who those people are that have to be there year to year and take advantage of them to support the club growth. But a lot of what I did and still am doing as a previous president is dedicating more and more time. If you want to see something succeed, just continuing to provide energy towards it.
Love that. Anyone else?
I think developing like both on the player side and like the skills obviously is going to be important for success for the club's like actual sport of Roundnet, but making sure the younger guys are prepared to like take the club. Like we have a couple like sophomores now who like bought into the club last year and now they're like on our extended e-board type thing. And I mean, they're learning under us how to run this club, what they need to do, like what it takes to, run tournaments, run a club, raise money. So making sure that they are prepared for like when we leave is a big part of like what we're doing. And then also like making sure that they develop as players enough to be able to keep developing players and players, like keeping incoming freshmen developing as well.
So do you have a election process for your e-board? And if so, like, do you host that earlier in the year so you can kind of have a transition period?
Yeah, we have elections. They are usually, well, first ones was last year. It was right before spring break, I think, because I think that's when our UREC department needs them in. So we usually do that. We'll give them time to like prepare for it, decide if they actually want to do it or not. We'll like suggest people or encourage some kids if we think that they'll be a really good president or treasurer or something like that. We're like, yo, I think you'd be good. Let me show you how this could work. If you're interested, then, it'll work out. If not, then no worries.
Nice.
Yeah, I think to go off what Jacob was just saying, I think one thing that's really smart that we've also been able to do well is obviously there are certain positions like president or vice president that we also have elections. It's also at the end of each year, like for the next, like when fall comes around. So we'll usually have it like before college national, before we go on that trip, like who's going to take over next year, and we have an election for all those. But generally speaking, we leave like 2 or 3 roles open, and we try pushing new freshmen or allowing new freshmen or sophomores to have those roles that we don't see. So for example, for the 2 pickups that we have twice a week that are recreational, sometimes like allowing them, like when they have, sometimes like people have peak interest like in the very beginning of the school year and they're like, oh my gosh, like before they figure out the rest of their schedule and the rest of their clubs, I find it smart to try giving them a, like within reason, a role of responsibility. That way they have something that ties them down in a sense in the beginning. Like, hey, if you want to keep showing up, like we need someone to, hold a few of the nets. That way I don't have to bring two buddies' cars. Like, would you mind bringing 2 nets every time you show up? And they say, oh yeah, sure. So being able to like give maybe like an equipment manager for some type of event, like just having people, you want like a lot of different people to have a lot of different roles. That way there's a lot of buy-in in different years. So like, generally speaking, our seniors and juniors hold like the president, vice president roles. And then as we go down the list, the less important in my eyes, at least in terms of skill needed to perform the job, we allow people freshman and sophomore year to have those roles. That way they have experience having a role and they get to see how we do the other roles. So it kind of leads well into when we leave, there's always someone that has already had a position that is now looking to hopefully fill the new position.
Nice. So you kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone with this assigning people leadership roles. You're helping to preserve the well-being of your club from year to year, but also you're giving people opportunities to become more engaged in the club and get more invested as an individual. So love that. Anyone else want to add anything to transitions season to season?
Yeah. My club for Roundnet, we're from Florida International University, Panthers Roundnet. We actually started in 2022, so we're like brand new in this whole aspect of like offers and stuff like that. But we have like a good and tight system, and the way that it works is that as of right now, the president is the person who found the club, so he is running it. And then when it first started, he had somebody that was also like in his grade become the vice president, but then they decided that it wouldn't make sense, because then when they do want to pass off the the presidency, like it wouldn't make sense. So like what they did is they decided to have somebody younger, so that they can learn like what the club is and stuff like that, so that they can then become the president. And in this case, that would be me. I'm the vice president of Panthers Roundnet, and the president, he's a senior, and he's about to graduate, and I'm a sophomore, essentially in credits. So then I will become the president, and then the same thing is gonna happen. I'm gonna pick a vice president who's also like younger, so that I could teach them like how to run the club and stuff like that. And then the other positions like treasurer or like outreach and stuff like that, the way that we do it is based off like seniority of like who goes to practices. So we want to reward the ones that actually stick to going to practices, competing in the tournaments that we have in down here in Florida. And then we reward them by saying like, hey, do you want to become an officer? And if they say yes, then of course like we'll keep them like as one of like the positions, and then we then like have like an interview for the people that are interested, and then we just pick the best person suited for that position. For now, that's what's been working, and hopefully we just stick to that.
Nice. Sounds like y'all are getting off the ground there. I'm excited to hear Florida's getting some college clubs. I hope to see you guys up at Tropic South Sectionals soon. That would be awesome. Feel free to connect with me later. I'd love to chat.
Yeah,
about that.
yeah. That's the one in Georgia you're talking about, right?
Yep. We're hosting it here in Athens.
Yeah. October 25th. No, October 26th. Sorry. Yeah, we're gonna go and compete, and hopefully we do good. We'll see. We have as of right now 6 official people that are going to go, and FIU was kind enough to actually pay for our like hotel and like the entry fee and stuff like that. All we have to do is like accommodate for travel. So yeah.
Great. Well, I look forward to meeting you.
All
right.
Go ahead. And I think Justin, you're at school. Is it Daniel, right? Is the president?
Yeah, Daniel Gonzalez. Yeah, he was here. He was here earlier, but he said his phone died, and I think he has to do something. And,
it was fun small world moment. He was playing up in DC with us for the summer, I think.
Yeah. He was. He told me that he was in DC and he had a great time there.
The quick question I was going to ask you though, you just like dropped like, hey, we got like hotels covered and stuff, and it's a new club. So just like, I think this group might be preaching the fire, but just for someone who might watch this recording back, like, your club's only like a year or two old. How'd you go about getting that funding? Like, did you just ask like nicely and they gave you a bunch of money, or did you do some paperwork?
Oh man.
How'd that go?
So the way that FIU works is that there's like tiers of like the sports clubs, right? And depending on like how we do like throughout the semester, on how we like progress as like how many new members we get and how much like community service we do is the amount of money that like they're willing to give us. So the first time that we became an official sports club, which was in 2023, they only gave us like $500, I think, and we did a lot of like community service. But then like the following like semesters, that's when we started to do like more like fundraising, more community service. Our club grew like dramatically. Actually, we went from like 100 to like 400 like followers on Instagram. Like our WhatsApp had like 150. The people that would actually show up to practices would be like good like 25 to 30 that would like actually consistently show up. And then you always have like those new people that would go. And then because of that, they saw that like we were growing like exponentially. They decided to give us more money, and we haven't used that money at all because we want to reserve for these big tournaments, for these collegiate tournaments, and that's what we're gonna do.
That's awesome. Well, congrats and keep it up.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Okay, so really appreciate all the panelists here today for their time. I think this has been super helpful. Definitely gonna get this uploaded somewhere so that people can continue to benefit from our talk here. I'll just give you all each of the panelists a brief moment if you want to offer some closing thoughts or final parting pieces of advice for anyone watching this back or for Justin here. Yeah, we'll close it out.
I think the last thing I like to say, and this kind of goes back to a little bit of how to create like kind of what Jacob was talking about. Like you want to actually be friends with everyone in the club and everyone that you see on campus. Like you want to make them feel like they're not just your spike ball. You know, like you're not like, oh, hey Tyler, you're the spike ball guy. It's like, no, I'm your friend or I'm someone who actually cares about your well-doing, whatever. I think one thing that's worked really well for our club that we started last year is it's generally more reserved for the competitive team, but we also invite everyone in the group meet or in different conversations. Is about once a month we will have like a team dinner, and or like whether it's a game like there's some other social activity that again like doesn't really cost any money except for people paying to get a little bit of food. But we'll have like days where people that are more senior, and a lot of times like for freshmen in the dorms, it's like besides going to other parties, it's their way of like actually getting to hang out with kids older than them too. So being able to host these different like parties or team dinners is really we found like in the beginning of the year, inviting like the first few people that want to show up to competitive practice, like they tend to stay once they experience like the actual friendship and like the whole community aspect that spikeball has to give, because that's really what college spikeball is for me, and I think what it is for most people, why they fell in love with it is playing a niche sport is fun and great, but especially once you be able to start to travel a little bit or meet new people, like it's just a community of people that you're able to meet. And so I think emphasizing that and not just saying that with words is, oh, the community is great, is, hey, let's actually do something together often to show you kind of what you can experience. And then when you start traveling, if that's ever a goal for competitive players, is like, this is what you get everywhere you go. So I think giving them a glimpse of kind of what the community aspect of spikeball allows is super important to do early on, and it's going to help with player retention a lot.
Yeah, great advice.
Yeah, I've got two small things. I'll just say first, I've been out of college for 6 years now, and I mean, like the experience is still like it was very helpful. Like Dylan mentioned, other folks mentioned, there's a lot of skills you learn by building up a community and building up a club in college. So just want to encourage that. And like when you finish college, you can apply the same skills to the real world, but also to just still growing around in other places. The second thing is less a comment, more an observation. I guess a comment is there were no women on this panel or in attendance. And I know a lot of progress has been made in getting more women into college Roundnet scenes and making them feel included and like there's a place for them to belong. But just for everyone here and also anybody who listens back to this, definitely like take a second to like just look at what you can do to make the Roundnet spaces you're in more welcoming to people that aren't just like you. So that's my 2 things. Thanks, Ben.
Great point.
Yeah, I'll be quick. At SB Roundnet on Instagram, if you guys ever need to get connected with me or anyone from Stony Brook. One of the greatest things about Roundnet is the community and building it up with each other, getting to meet so many interesting people and find a niche interest that brings so many people together. And that's what I'm trying to do at Stony Brook and what we're trying to do well beyond that. So I appreciate the ability to connect with you guys today and everybody else who is able to watch this back. So if you guys ever do need anything, let us know. But the insights, as hopeful I am that I was helpful to you all, you have certainly shared a lot with me that I have to reflect on as well. So thank you all for your time as well.
Thank you, Dylan.
I would just say, kind of treat, if you're in a leadership position, treat it like it's a job, because like Ben said, there are a lot of skills that translate from, being in charge of an organization or a club that can help you in a job down the line. We had a couple of presidents in the past who kind of like gave up and didn't really do much and kind of like let the club fall apart a little bit. So, it's been kind of one of my points to like really try to fix that and like get our club back to what it should have been. And I mean, I'm personally a sports management major, so this is kind of like right on my avenue. So it kind of is in a way like a job or an internship for me. And I think like if you really care enough about it like that, then things are going to be good for your club.
Yeah, that's awesome. I like to joke with people. It's a joke, but it's also not a joke. I put, UGA spike ball president, whatever, on my resume back in college when I was applying for entry-level positions. And almost every interview, the very first question, tell me about spike ball. What is spike ball? It's like, it stands out. It really does. So, and I got to speak a lot about, kind of the skills I gained, the challenges I faced, and all those great interview topics. So it really is a good thing for your professional development too.
Yeah.
Isaiah, I think you're the last one up.
Yeah, I guess the most important thing is just inclusion. Like just getting as many people into your club as possible will be massive for the future of our sport, especially new freshmen, showing them what competitive side is like. At least that's been my biggest goal. Is I just want this club to be as big as it's ever been. Buckeye Roundnet used to be massive, and we're just trying to get back. So just, I don't know, make sure that you're taking the time to really pour into your new players. I know it's really easy to get caught up in your own skill, in your own grind, but just adding more people into that, first off, will grow your club, but also you'll just make so many friends along the way. So I would just really, really encourage just interpersonal relationships between your clubs or in your members. Just really pour into that.
Great. Thanks, Isaiah. Thanks again to all the panelists. This was a solid hour and 40. So really appreciate everyone's time and insights. And I know I learned a lot just sitting here facilitating. So hopefully this is helpful for others watching this back. So thanks again. Hope to see you around the country this year as the college season gets underway. And best of luck to everyone in their college seasons.
Thank you again for having us, Ben.
Of course.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, dope, man. See you in Georgia.
See ya.
Peace.
Have a good one, everybody.
Do you guys have like a really early college sectionals?